Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parajapsa Stuta Sadasya Srimati Swayam Grace Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai ISKCON Seshadripuram Srila Prabhupada ki jai Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parajapsa Stuta Sadasya Srimati Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai Jai Vishnupada Srila Gaura Kishore Das Maharaj ki jai Jai Vishnupada Satchidananda Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai Jai Vishnupada Vaishnava Sarvam Sri Jagannath Das Maharaj ki jai जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जी गोपाल भट्टदास सतनाथ गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय नमाचार्य दास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से गुरु श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसारि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपिन श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय श्री गौरांगी बेंगलुरेश्वर भगवान की जय श्री माया के दाम की जय वृंदावन धाम की जय गंगा माई की जय यमुना माई की जय भक्ति देवी की जय तुलसी देवी की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय इस्कॉन मन गुरुवंद की जय समावित भक्तवृंद की जय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि all glories to the assembly all glories to the assembly all glories to the assembly all glories to the Guru and Shri Gauranga all glories to Srila Prabhupada की जय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वती व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अपत्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी Hare Krishna, welcome you all to the Friday morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 4, chapter 10, text 21 to text 30. Text 21. Apashyamanah sattatat tada tata inam mahamride kanchana manavottamah purim didrikshan apinavishad dvisham namayinam veda chikirsitam janaha. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Dhruva Maharaj, the best of human beings, observed that in that great battlefield, not one of the opposing soldiers was left standing with proper weapons. He then desired to see the city of Alkapuri, but he thought to himself, no one knows the plans of the mystic Yakshas. Text 22. Iti Bruvam Chitraratah Saratim Yatta Paresham Patiyoga Sankitah शुश्राव शब्दम जलधेर इवेरितम नभस्पतो दिक्षुराज रजो मदृश्यथ. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In all these verses, there's no purpose. In the meantime, while Dhruva Maharaj, doubtful of his mystic enemies, was talking with his charioteer, they heard a tremendous sound as if the whole ocean were there, and they found that from the sky a great dust storm was coming over them from all directions. Text 23. Shani chaditam vyomha gnanikikena sarvatah vispurat tadita dikshu trasayat tanay itnuna. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Within a moment, the whole sky was forecast with dense clouds and severe thundering was heard. There was glittering electric lightning and severe rainfall. Text 24. Vabrishu Rudiram Raughasr Puya Vinmutra Medasah Nipetur Gaganat Asya Kabandani Agrato Naga. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. My dear thoughtless Vidura, in that rainfall there was blood, mucus, pus, stool, urine, and marrow falling heavily before Dhruva Maharaj, and there were trunks of bodies falling from the sky. Text 25. Tatak ke drishyata girir nipetuh sarvatottisham gada pariga nistrimsha musala shashma varshinaha. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Next, a great mountain was visible in the sky, and from all directions hailstones fell, along with lances, clubs, swords, iron bludgeons, and great pieces of stone. Text 26. Aheo Shani Nishvasa Vamantognim Rushakshibhi Adya Dhavan Gajamattaha Simhapyagrascha Yudosaha. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Dhruva Maharaj also saw many big serpents with angry eyes, vomiting forth fire and coming to devour him, along with groups of mad elephants, lions, and tigers. Text 27. Samudra Urmibir Bimaha Plavayan Sarvato Bhuvam Asasada Maharadaha Kalpanta Iva Bhishanaha. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Then, as if it were the time of the dissolution of the whole world, the fierce sea with foaming waves and great roaring sounds came forward before him. Text 28. Evam vidani anekani trasanani amanashvinam sasrujustigma gataya ashurya maya yasuraha. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The demon yakshas are by nature very heinous, and by the demoniac power of illusion, they can create many strange phenomena to frighten one who is less intelligent. Text 29. Dhruve prayuktam asurais tam mayam ati dushtaram nishamyat tasya munayah sham ashaman shan samagataha. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When the great sages heard that Dhruva Maharaj was overpowered by the illusory mystic tricks of the demons, they immediately assembled to offer him auspicious encouragement. Text 30. Munaya uchuhu Auttanapad Bhagavams Tava Sarangadhanva Devakshino Avanatarti Haro Vipakshan Yannam Madhyayam abhidaya nishamya chadha lokon jasa tarati dushtaram angat mrityum. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All the sages said, Dear Dhruva, O son of King Uttanapada, may the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Saranga Dhanva, who relieves the distress of his devotees, kill all your threatening enemies. The holy name of the Lord is as powerful as the Lord himself. Therefore, simply by chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord, many men can be fully protected from fierce death without difficulty. Thus, a devotees say, The great rishis approached Dhruva Maharaj at a time when his mind was very perplexed due to the magical feats exhibited by the yakshas. A devotee is always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By his inspiration, only the sages came to encourage Dhruva Maharaj and assure him that there was no danger because he was a soul fully surrendered to the Supreme Lord. By the grace of the Lord, if a devotee at the time of death can simply chant his holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, simply by chanting this Mahamantra, he immediately surpasses the great ocean of material sky and enters the spiritual sky. He never has to come back for repetition of birth and death. Simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can surpass the ocean of death. So Dhruva Maharaj was certainly able to surpass the illusory magical feats of the Yakshas, which for the time being disturbed his mind. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the fourth canto, 10th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Dhruva Maharaj Fight with the Yakshas. Omagyanatimirandasya ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुर्मिलितं तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं जागृजातं सगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितान् स हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुस्तुते प्रणमामि हरिप्रियवाच्यरूपेश्य कुवासनुते पतितानं पावने वैष्णवे नमः. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवशादि गौर भक्तवृंद. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. मोहम करोति वाचालं निकं लंघे देवीं कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरम्. Hare Krishna. So we see here in this chapter, Dhruva Maharaj is having a long fight with the yakshas, and these yakshas have a lot of mystic powers. They are known for these mystic powers. They can create at any time any disturbance, and they can create also any type of illusion they want, so that they may frighten the other party in the battlefield. So in the process of this battle, we see that as the battle was going on, Dhruva Maharaj, there was a time when his mind was perplexed because these yakshas exhibit a lot of magical powers. At some point of time, it looked that they had no weapons, but all of a sudden, they appeared with a lot of weapons, and then a lot of dead bodies and all fell from the sky with urine, stool, and all those things. So this is how these yakshas always play. So at that time, the sages came and addressed Dhruva Maharaj that he should chant the holy name of the Lord, and that will give him all the protection. And the holy name is as powerful as the Lord himself, and then he will be protected by the Lord, and thus he will be saved from the battle. So we will understand some important points from this. One is that the sages address Dhruva, in which they say address the Lord as Saranga Dhanva. That means who relieves the distresses of his devotees. And by chanting the holy name of the Lord, the Dhruva Maharaj can be saved. So in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila is explaining the glories of devotional service, in which he says, Madasraya Kata Prishtaha Shrimanti Katayanti Cha Tapanti Vividas Tapa Maitan Mad Gadachetasaha. He says that engage constantly in chanting and hearing about me. the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sadhus do not suffer from any material miseries because they are always filled with the thoughts of my pastimes and activities. That means the devotees of the Lord are constantly engaged in chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. So they are not, uh, uh, they don't generally suffer from any material miseries. So the Srila Prabhupada mentioned that there are three types of sufferings that all living entities go through: Adhyatmika, Adi Bhautika, and Adi Daivika. So Adhyatmika is sufferings due to one's mind and body. Adi Bhautika is sufferings created by other living entities. And Adi Daivika is the sufferings caused by higher planet residents of the higher planetary systems. Like, for example, there may be a heavy wind, heavy rain, thunderstorm, and so forth. So these are all sufferings caused by by the residents of the higher planets. So these types of suffering, mind, other living entities, etc., they constantly create disturbances to every living being. So in this, Lord Kapila explained that one who is always constantly engaged in chanting in the and hearing about the Lord, such devotees, they do not suffer these material because miseries because they always filled with the thoughts of the Lord's pastimes and his activities. Then the next point that is mentioned is that the holy name of the Lord is as powerful as the Lord himself. And just by chanting and hearing the holy name, the devotees is automatically protected from fierce death without any difficulty. So the Lord is absolute, unlike we are related or we have relative phenomenon. For example, if we call water, 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 water will not come. And similarly, if we address a person, he's as a person is different, his name is different, his form is different. But in the case of the Lord being absolute, the Lord's name, form, qualities, pastimes, they're all the same, non-different. So by chanting the name of the Lord is physically present in that holy name, and then he is always there ready to give protection to the devotee. So some examples are in that Srimad Bhagavatam. One example is about Ajamila. You all might know about it. Ajamila was a resident of a village which now is known as Kanauj. So he was trained, he was born in a Brahmana family, and he was trained to be a perfect Brahmana by studying all the Vedas and following all the regulative principles, etc. But what happened was at the same time he had some past in his previous life, he had some sinful tendencies. So somehow this Ajamila got attracted by a prostitute. He fell down, abandoned all the regulative principles, etc. And finally, uh, he married that prostitute, and in her womb, he got 10 children, all sons. And the last one, by due to some pious activity previously, he named him as Narayana. So at the time of Ajamila's death, the Yamadutas came to take him, and he seeing the fearful form of the Yamadutas, Ajamila got scared, and in the process, seeing them, he called out the name Narayana. Actually, he called out to his son Narayana because that son was very dear to Ajamila. So when he called out Narayana, the Vishnu Dutas from Vaikuntha planets came, and there's a long discussion between Vishnu Dutas and Yamadutas. The Vishnu Dutas say that he has uttered Narayana, so we have to come to take him to Vaikuntha. And then the Yamadutas say that he has committed a lot of sinful activities, so he has to be taken to Yamaloka. So this way there is a long discussion, but then they claim that Arjamira glorified the Lord by calling out his name, so he cannot be punished. So the Vishnu Dutta said, simply by once chanting the holy name of Narayana, this Brahmana has become free from all the reactions of sinful life. So he has been freed not only from the sins of this life, but the sins of so many, many thousands of other lives, previous lives also. So now in the Shastras, it is explained that if one atones according to the directions of the Shastra. I mean, we commit so many sinful activities, but if one atones according to the directions of the Shastras, one need not actually become free from the sinful reactions. But if one chants the holy name of the Lord, even with Navabash, with an offensive state, then still he becomes free from sinful reactions. So chanting the glories of the Lord's name awakens all fortune. So they said that there is no doubt that Ajamila has become completely free from sinful reactions. So he cannot be punished by Yamaraj. So when this discussion was going on, the Vishnu Dutas released Ajamila from the ropes of Yamadutas, and they left for their own abode. So the Brahmana Ajamila then offered respectful obeisances to the Vishnu Dutas and thanked him for rescuing them from the Yamadutas. Then, of course, once he became then he became a pure devotee of the Lord. He lamented how much sinful he had been, but still the Lord, being very very merciful, appeared, though he called out his son's name Narayana. So Ajamila, got his original consciousness, and he gave up everything and went to Haridwar to practice pure devotional service, engaged in devotional service without deviation. And he was always thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Vishnu Dutas went back. Uh, in summary, there are two slokas concluding that Ajamila was though sinful, uttered the name of Lord Narayana to call out his son. So it was a Namambasa state. That means with an intention, it was not calling out the name of the Lord out of love or out of this thing, but rather he called him out of fear. But still he got liberated. So there are two very important slokas in which the Vishnu Dutas instruct the Yamadutas. One of them is in this from the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Says that one who chants the holy name of the Lord is immediately freed from the reactions of unlimited sins, even if he chants indirectly to indicate something else. For example, jokingly, or for musical entertainment, or even neglectfully. This is accepted by all learned scholars of the scriptures. That means even if one might chant the holy name of the Lord as a joke, but still he becomes free from the reactions of unlimited sins. This is called chanting the Lord's name indirectly. So sometimes someone might joke, or sometime might spell the name of the Lord with some musical instrument, or even out of neglect, but still it is accepted by the scholars as chanting holy in the name of the Lord, and he becomes free from sinful reactions. And the next following sloka, they say, if one chants the holy name of Hari and then dies because of an accidental misfortune, such as falling from the top of a house, slipping and suffering broken bones while traveling on the road, being bitten by a serpent, being afflicted with pain and high fever, or being injured by a weapon, one is immediately absolved from having to enter hellish life, even though he is sinful. So even if someone has led a very sinful life, but if he chants the name of the Lord Hari and then dies by accident, or he falls from the top of a house and all his bones and all are broken, and or he's being bitten by a serpent, or he has a high fever and all those things, or even if he's injured by a weapon, as we see here, Dhruva Maharaj is fighting with weapons, and the Yakshas are also fighting with weapons. But here the Vishnu say that one becomes absolved completely from having to enter hellish life by just chanting the holy name of the Lord. So a devotee is always protected by just chanting the holy name of the Lord, because the name of the Lord is not different from the Lord himself. Some examples are given we see in Mahabharata. Actually, Draupadi was being disrobed. She tried her level best to protect herself from the Kauravas, but then she realized it was not possible. And then she lifted her two hands and she uttered the name of the Lord, and the Lord immediately appeared in the form of a sari and rescued her from that abominable situation. Uh, so at some point, Draupadi thought that she could save herself, but then finally she realized that she could not, and she was rescued by the Lord. So the Lord actually waits for someone to call out his name so that he can come and rescue the devotee. The devotee should always think himself to be dependent on the Lord, for always seeking protection from the Lord. If one thinks that he is independent of the Lord, then that is when one goes through a lot of struggle. So if one feels always dependent on the Lord, following the six principles of surrender, then one automatically feels a necessity that yes, my Lord is there to always take care of me and give me shelter. Another example is given in the Mahabharata itself, that see, Arjuna was very confident of his victory because Krishna was by his side. And so it is said that Arjuna was always dependent on Krishna at every point of time. And Krishna knew also of Arjuna's dependence on Krishna. So he protected them all the way, right from before the beginning of the battlefield and all the way up to the end of the battle. So there is a mention in Mahabharata as to how, when the battle was over and the Pandavas became victorious, uh, Krishna actually asked Arjuna to get down. Arjuna asked Krishna to get down. So there was a lot of discussion going on this way. And finally, Arjuna got down, and thereafter, Krishna also got down from the chariot. So when the Lord got down from the chariot actually burst into flames. And it is mentioned that the weapons that were fired by the Kauravas onto Arjuna and aimed at Krishna, they were actually there in a subtle form within the chariot. But because Krishna was present in the chariot, the arms did not explode. But as soon as Krishna got down from the chariot burst into flames. Uh, and this how the Lord rescued even Arjuna even after the battle was over. So the point is that one has to always depend on the Lord and take shelter of the Lord. And the sages here are giving an assurance to Dhruva Maharaj that Dhruva Maharaj need not worry, because being a devotee of the Lord, he will always be protected by the Lord, and that he should chant the holy name of the Lord. So chanting the holy name of the Lord is always a protective means, and one should always try to chant. But then it is not possible to chant the name of the Lord unless and until one has gone through the process of practice, because it does not happen that if one does not chant, that the last moment of time he thinks of Krishna. Many examples I've seen practically in my life also. We try and meet many people and ask them to chant, but they are reluctant to chant. And then at the last moment of time, we see that they normally remember someone else very close to them, like father or mother or sister or brother and so forth, or husband and wife. So Shastra has explained that if one thinks of his wife, the person gets a woman's body in his next life and he becomes a wife. And if one thinks of a husband, she gets a man's body and he becomes a husband in the next life. So this way, the cycle goes on, and the only way is that the process of practice, by constantly chanting the name of the Lord. At the time of death, one can remember the Lord, and the Lord is always there to give shelter to such person. There is another quote in the seventh canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Narada Muni instructs Yudhishthira, a lot of very vital instructions that Narada Muni gives to Yudhishthira Maharaj as to what are the things that one in a Grihastha ashrama has to follow. And then in this particular instruction, he said the process of chanting the holy name of the Lord is so powerful that by this chanting, even householders, or that is Grihasthas, can very easily gain the ultimate result achieved by persons in the renounced order. And then he says, thus I have explained to you the process of religion. That means he says that generally the renounced order, that is sannyasis, etc. They have many means. They go to the forest, meditate on the Lord, etc., and they become delivered. But the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is so powerful that even householders, that anyone, wife, children, anyone can take to the process. And any varnas, any ashrama, that is either brahmachari or grihastha or any ashrama, anyone can chant irrespective of whatever their origin of birth is, and they can get perfection and they can be protected. They can get the same result of protection from the Lord. This is how the holy name of the Lord is very, very merciful. And the purpose, Srila Prabhupada mentions three examples, three important points. He says that by sound, one becomes conditioned. By sound, one becomes liberated. So so potent is the Maha Mantra that it delivers all. So these are three important points. That means by sound, one becomes conditioned in this life. Means that many times people are used to hearing what Srila Prabhupada calls as Gramya Katha, or mundane music, mundane stories, etc. So by that, what happens is that one becomes conditioned in the material life, because that is how they always remember. We see that many times while passing in the roads also, somebody may be loudly singing a cinema song, because that is how they are conditioned. So the more one hears material sound, Srila Prabhupada gives an example of how a frog makes a sound and the snake comes and bites eats the frog, kills the frog and eats it. That means the frog makes a noise. When we see that normally in monsoon season the frogs make a noise, but by that cockroach sound, if it is Prabhupada mentioned that a snake comes and swallows the frog. So this is how those who are materially conditioned, they try to get and they become entangled in materialistic sound vibrations, and they become more and more conditioned. But on the other side, it's the same sound. When it is a spiritual sound, one becomes liberated from this conditioned life. So Mahamantra is such that it is so potent that it can deliver all the living conditions. And if you see, the material sound is such that uh, uh, many times, sometimes a song may be in the form of a sad tune, and people get carried away by that, and they even start shedding tears. Just like from many times when people go to the cinema, they see the cinema and then they come out shedding tears. But actually, that itself is an illusion. The cinema itself is an illusion because it's not the truth. And from seeing that illusion, people get carried away. On the other hand, if there is a very happy incident, like somebody takes birth, somebody gets married, etc., one becomes very joyful. But the Mahamantra is such that it is transcendental to all situations and transcendental to all material sounds, and it can destroy all the sinful reactions done in so many millions of lives. It is said that it can uproot all the material desires as well. And as per Srila Haridas Thakura, who are known as Namacharya Haridas Thakura, it can be strength within the heart of the person. There is one more example given in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where there was a devotee in the name of Satyaraja Khan. He asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said, "My dear Lord, being a householder and a materialistic man, I do not know the process of advancing in spiritual life. I submit myself unto your lotus feet and request you to give me orders." So this Satyaraja Khan was one of the associates during Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, and he said that he's a householder, where generally people think that householders are generally conditioned, and he admits himself to be not only a householder but also a materialistic man. So he's asking how to process in this, how to advance in the spiritual life. And he says that I'm submitting myself unto your lotus feet, please give me orders. To which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, without cessation, that means continuously keep on. He said, continue chanting the name of the Lord Krishna. Whenever possible, serve him and devotees, the Vaishnavas. Simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, one becomes free from all sinful reactions. One can complete the 9 processes of devotional service simply by chanting the holy name. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised that constantly always keep on chanting the holy name of the Lord, serve Lord Krishna as and when possible, and also the devotees of Krishna. And by chanting the name of Krishna, one becomes free from all sinful reactions. That way you can be delivered. And there is one more point that is mentioned in the purport, saying that one can complete the 9 process of devotional service simply by chanting the holy name. That is, Prahlad Maharaj gives in the 7th canto, that's 9 process of devotional service. That is Shavanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedam, so forth. So, in this it is mentioned that by chanting the name of the Lord, one completes all the 9 process of, that is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, so forth. That means one can achieve the results of all the 9 process of devotional service simply by chanting the holy name. For example, Archana is a very detailed process and it requires a lot of things to be maintained, like cleanliness, purity, and so forth. But chanting the holy name of the Lord is such that anyone can chant, anywhere can chant, they can chant whenever they want. Of course, not whenever. Best is time is to chant is the morning when one's mind is fresh, and because the day goes on with lot of material struggles. So chanting of the name of the Lord is as good as having perfected or having done all the other methods of devotional service like Archana, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, and all those things. And before I conclude the class, in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Bhishma Deva was leaving the body, there is a sloka which says, the personality of Godhead who appears in the mind of the devotee by attentive devotion and meditation, by chanting of the holy name, releases the devotee from the bondage of fruitive activities at the time of his quitting the material body. So here it is very, very clear that if one chants the holy name of the Lord and one becomes generally disturbed when one quits his body, not only conditioning due to our conditional existence, but also what happens is that death is a very, very painful exercise. And Shastra has explained somewhere that the pain is at the time of death is equal to the bite of 20,000 scorpions, or somewhere it's mentioned 40,000 scorpions and all. Even the bite of one scorpion is very, very painful. But the pain of 20 or 40,000 or whatever the scorpions may be is very, very painful. And the person who is at the point of leaving his body is not able to express the pain, but he feels that the pain is very, very severe. But when one chants the holy name of the Lord, he becomes free from the bondage of all fruitive activities at the time of quitting the body. So that is why if you see, even in the previous years, people used to leave their body, sometimes smiling, sometimes very pleasantly, and so forth. This because people of the yesteryear years were not as sinful as we see these days. So that is why people, when they leave their bodies, because of their material conditioning, they go through a lot of pain. So, but by chanting the name of the Lord, in fact, Bhishma Deva had a desire to see the Lord. And though Bhishma Deva was stuck with so many arrows in his body, but still uh, he had that desire, and the Lord took away the pain that Bhishma Deva was having due to these arrows. And on the other hand, the Lord utilized the opportunity, asking Bhishma Deva to give instructions to the Pandavas. And Bhishma Deva gave such valuable instructions to the Pandavas, which is there in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is how, by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one becomes protected from any abominable situations. So the point is that by chanting the holy name, one can surpass this ocean of death. Material cycle, life cycle is very, very difficult. It's a hard struggle. So birth, death, going through the stages of birth, death, old age, and disease. But uh, one can become free from all these things by simply chanting the holy name of the Lord. And Dhruva Maharaj, it is said that he was able to surpass, like I mentioned at the beginning of the class, the Yakshas used a lot of magical powers to bewilder Dhruva Maharaj. But then the sages came here and advised him that you chant the name of the Lord and you will be protected by the Lord. So Dhruva Maharaj chanted, and what happens in the subsequent slokas will be discussed in the next chapter as to how Dhruva Maharaj is rescued with Swayambhuva Manu intervening in the discussions with Dhruva Maharaj. So with this, I conclude the class for the day. Anyone has got any questions, any comments, they can ask me. So there are no questions or comments, I'll take the class as concluded. Yes, Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, what is Namabhas? Can you explain, Prabhuji? Namabhas.
Namabhas. Namabhas is chanting with offenses. I mean, one might chant without an intention, or one might uh, have some offensive mentality and still be chanting. The point is that one should not chant with offenses, but still, if someone is, like in the case of Ajamila, he did not want to, his intention was not to call out the Lord, but call out his son. But still, the Lord appeared because he chanted the name of the Lord Narayana. So sometimes the chanting might not be intentional, but still the Lord considers that someone has chanted the name of the Lord. But one should not take that for granted and commit offenses. That is one of the these things for chanting the holy name of the Lord purely.
It means that chanting with offenses is the Namabhas.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.